You're listening to Wild Things and Wild Places, a Muley Fanatic Foundation podcast that aims to discuss issues and efforts related to the Muley Fanatic Foundation mission, the conservation of mule deer, furthering the sport of hunting, and sound wildlife management.
Everybody knows I'm a Muley fanatic.
It's time for Wild Things and Wild Places. And here's your guide, Joshua Coursey.
And welcome to Wild Things and Wild Places. And joining me today, Chris McBarnes, who is the executive director, the grand poobah, if you will, for the Wyldlife Fund. And if you're not familiar with the Wyldlife Fund, we're going to dig into it and talk about the Wyldlife Fund and the great work that the Wyldlife Fund does. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you to both you and the entire Muley Fanatic Foundation. You're a true class act in Wyoming, and it's an honor to partner with you and be on your podcast today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you carving out some time because I feel the same about you, as you know that. It amazes me when you talk about efforts that are making an impact, the Wyldlife Fund and the impact that the Wyldlife Fund has had in its very short time of being created. Only going back to 2019 have you been on the map, but the impact has been nothing short of profound. And I want to talk about that, but I think it probably deserves a little history about why the Wyldlife Fund was established. It was established with a very purposed intent by the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission in tandem with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. And I think we should start there, and then I think we can bring us up to speed with some very exciting stuff that has just been announced that I know you've been very instrumental in.
So the Wyldlife Fund, we're a nonprofit 501c3. Our mission is to unite people to advance Wyoming wildlife habitat, research, and education. And I guess the first thing I'll say is the Wyldlife Fund wasn't created to take the place of any NGO across the state. It's a team effort, and we all have a specific role to play being carried out and implemented by organizations like yours. And so there was a group of stakeholders in 2018 and 2019 that saw the need to establish, in essence, a nonprofit arm, a nonprofit partner to specifically drive the strategic interests of the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission and Department. And so that group of stakeholders determined that setting up a 501c3 would be proper. They did that, and then they went on a job search, and I was fortunate enough to be hired as employee one and stand this up. It was an interesting time. My first day on the job was March 9th, 2020, very, very close to that global pandemic. And so we were born in the fires of COVID, so to speak. But we have had a lot of progress over the past 3 years. Our organization is all about helping implement common sense, on-the-ground wildlife projects that we can all get behind. Wildlife, it's such a passionate topic. People have very specific views, but the Wyldlife Fund is really a home for all people, and we try to invest in projects and implement projects that just make sense for wildlife. And with our strategic partnership with Game and Fish, what we've been able to do is we've been able to help great folks like the Muley Fanatic Foundation, who work so hard at raising funds, effectively get those monies on the ground to make the biggest difference. A little history of the fund: we have a 10-member board strewn out across the state, represented by many interests. We have ranchers, we have avid hunters, we have individuals who are just eco-tour enthusiasts, a little bit of everyone. We don't lobby. We're not at the State House. Again, we're a projects-driven organization. And according to our bylaws, Josh, we'll always at least have one game and fish commissioner on our board, and the director of the department is a non-voting member. And that was set up that way to ensure that we always stay in lockstep with fish according to their priorities.
Yeah, and what a charge, right? When you talk about being able to be this center point or this vessel for collecting funds, because quite frankly, there are times when monies are raised wanting to be allocated to worthwhile landscape level projects, and you would think that it would be easy to just be able to turn that money over to Game and Fish, but because of their budget and the way the fiscal years fall, it is a process that can be quite cumbersome. And when you have the Wyldlife Fund to be this means to be able to collect and then be able to distribute and allocate accordingly, you talk about streamline, that's what it does. It makes things easy so that work can get done. Fair assessment?
100% fair assessment. And I've talked to foundations, and not only are we trying to help like yours get that money to where it needs to go. Wyoming's wildlife knows no bounds. There's folks in Idaho that love Wyoming's wildlife. There's folks in Virginia that loves Wyoming's wildlife. And we want to bring those resources here it's for our resource. And so creating that streamlined process, building this positive relationships with foundations and other NGO partners, I really think we're onto something. And I think the Wyldlife Fund will play a role in helping Wyoming's wildlife, not only now, but it's important for the future.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And when you talk about big ticket items and wildlife crossings, I'm talking conservation easements. When you talk about those type of opportunities that take several hundred thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars to be able to have this ability to put those dollars and to have one basket to be able to have the collection of such funds to be able to continue to reach and aspire for those fiscal goals. I know from us as a nonprofit NGO or non-government organization, the Wyldlife Fund was a breath of fresh air.
Well, I appreciate it, Josh, and I feel like we still have a lot to prove, but some great things have happened over a short period of time, and commend Director Nesvik and Deputy Director B and the Commission for standing behind us. And like any NGO, and I think you guys have done it really well, you've got to prove your worth. You got to prove your credibility. You got to prove to folks that you're getting things done. And that's how we're trying to posture the Wyldlife Fund and proving to folks we can be a player moving forward in partnership and cooperation with folks like the Muley Fanatic Foundation.
Well, Chris, the one thing that doesn't necessarily fit within the wheelhouse of being able to streamline and make the efficiency of dollars get to the ground in a very just intended effort is your Inspire a Kid Camp. I mean, that we're not talking dollars and cents here. We're not talking fundraising in some regards. But the Inspire a Kid Camp, of course, the Inspire a Kid initiative, which is Director Nesvik's initiative that I think is absolutely fabulous. The Wyldlife Fund has now hosted 2 years a kids camp in the Little Jenny Ranch in Bondurant, Wyoming. And you talk about difference making. How do you put a value on the impact of the lives that camp has had an impact on?
I don't think you can. It's the same thing with the program that you guys have put together, putting the U and Hunt. You can't put a price tag on that. And you and I, we're involved in a lot of stuff: conservation easements, wildlife-friendly fence modifications, wildlife crossings. All that's important. It's incredibly important. But to me, I think investing in that future generation of conservationists, it's the most important thing any of us can be doing. And that's what makes Wyoming so great. We have a legacy of doing that, of handing the resource down to the next generations. When I rode around on the Little Jenny Ranch with Mr. Mark Hamlin, the owner, and he said, "Chris, I want to do something here for kids." My ears perked up, and I said, "Well, let's partner, Mark, and do something for kids, because we can never be doing enough of that." So the Hamlin family, Mark, Elizabeth, and Faith, and Richard have opened their arms. And like you said, the last 2 years, we've had roughly 60 youth, ages 12 to 15, both young women and young men, come to the Little Jenny. We have a wilderness camp we take them to, and it's not only about outdoor recreation like fly fishing and horseback riding, which that's important. That's the hook that gets them there, but that's not really the real reason why we want them there. We want to focus on self-reliance, sending them home with skills that they didn't have before, building their level of personal responsibility for the world around them, and growing their leadership skills. And obviously, 5 days in the wilderness, it's wonderful. It's not a silver bullet, but hopefully it's planting some seeds in these young people that they can go back to their communities of Riverton and Rock Springs and Buffalo and Hewlett and Cody and start making a difference. And then we also partner with out-of-state organizations from California and New Jersey to also bring some kids in from out-of-state to share the wonders of Wyoming, our wildlife and wild places. And I got to tell you, Josh, it's been the most rewarding thing I've been a part of attaining this post. And we're going to keep it going strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And a beautiful setting it is. That's truly God's country where this gathering occurs every year. I know from the participation and the invitation of being able to be a part of that in 2022 was absolutely amazing. You could see it all over the kids' face that the week that they had. There are very valuable opportunities when you can put away the cell phones and just have quietness and fellowship and break bread together in a setting like that. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Well, and here's the thing we try to do with these camps too, Josh. There's such a focus of inspiring a kid. And I agree with it 1,000,000%. Director Nesvik, amazing initiative. But I don't want to forget about the younger generation either. Our pioneer hunters across Wyoming. And what we're trying to do with this camp is give them opportunities to come in and help the kids with fly tying, impart the wisdom they've learned over the years in the field with these kids. Our retired game and fish employees, they still have a wealth of knowledge and passion to share. So we're trying to provide space for the top riders of the world to come in and continue to impart that wisdom. And that's really important to us as well. And I know you guys do that with putting the UN Hunt. And I think it's something that we all need to keep in mind. Yes, we need to pass the lessons down to future generations. But we can't forget about the people who've come before us and keeping them engaged in conservation across the state.
Yeah, well said. No, that's the charge, right?
Right.
Hey, Chris, let's visit a little bit about before we get to, and there's some other things I want to visit with you about regarding specifically the Wyldlife Fund. Let's talk about Wildlife for Tomorrow.
I'm so glad to have the opportunity to talk about Wyldlife for Tomorrow, because I think it speaks to another reason an organization like the Wyldlife Fund can play a pivotal role in Wyoming's conservation future. So going back to our earlier comments in the podcast, I tried to emphasize the Wyldlife Fund is a home for all lovers of wildlife. We're apolitical. We're not lobbying at the State House. There's a ton of great organizations that do that, and they're very important. We're just not one of them. If you love wildlife, we want the Wyldlife Fund to be a home for you. And so in the creation of Wyldlife for Tomorrow, this is a program that specifically focuses on the tourism and recreation sector in Wyoming. Businesses across this state, small businesses, depend on the health and well-being of our herds for their bottom line. It's the main driver of tourism in Wyoming is our wildlife and wild places. That's quite undeniable. And so we wanted to create a program that allowed those businesses from Wyoming's wildlife a direct mechanism to give back to on-the-ground conservation projects. And so we launched this program. You can learn more about it on the wyldlifefund.org. That's WYLD. And we have over 80 businesses signed up that are in that tourism and recreation space, generated over $300,000 for on-the-ground wildlife projects. And again, some of those projects, we have native cutthroat trout projects, we have elk research, we have wildlife crossings, we have riverbed restoration, again, just good common sense projects that fit the mission and vision of Game and Fish. And so it's an exciting program. I think it's going to continue to grow legs and be an additional source of revenue for completing these important conservation projects across Wyoming.
I know in September you had a gathering in Pinedale, Wyoming, where you were able to showcase and launch and make known to folks that if you enjoy sipping on an adult frothy cold beverage, here's a way you can do that and also still continuing to be contributing to conservation at the same time. You have a great partnership there that you have been able to put together with the Altitude Chop House and Brewery out of Laramie. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because in my mind, when you can put things together, have a beer for deer, cheers.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's another part of Wildlife for Tomorrow. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Some businesses are giving $5 for every client they take down the river. Other businesses are asking customers to round up at the register. And then another thing that we've really focused on is co-branded products. Co-branded products made in Wyoming for the people of Wyoming. And so Altitude Chop House and Brewery in Laramie, we did our first co-branded beer with those folks, and they're wonderful. The second co-branded beer with the folks at Roadhouse in Jackson. And then this most recent co-branded beer is with the good folks at Wind River Brewery in Pinedale. And we came up with the Pronghorn Pilsner. And so the Pronghorn Pilsner is being canned by the wonderful folks at Wind River Brewery. It's being distributed across the state of Wyoming, both in cans and on tap. Or, of course, we encourage you, if you're in Pinedale, stop by Wind River Brewery. And a portion of all proceeds are coming back for wildlife. And it's already generating some significant dollars in very short order. And the cool thing about the program is, too, Josh, we partner with the Hobbs School at the University of Wyoming and with their students, and they do all the graphic design work for these co-branded products. So it's just another novel way to raise funds. And I want to thank the folks at Wind River Brewery. They're amazing, good Wyoming people. An additional co-branded product we have, if you don't want to drink beer and you like coffee, we have a co-branded coffee with Cowboy Coffee out of Jackson, and that roast will be sold soon online, and you can buy it at their places of business in Jackson. Yeah, it's another kind of great tentacle. And I got to thank our board member, Taylor Phillips, owner of Jackson Hole Eco Tour Adventures. Taylor, he's driven this. He's a small business owner that said, I can do more. And he's leading by example. He's put this program together, and I'm so thankful for Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Taylor, very much. Very passionate, very committed, and there's a lot of passion and commitment in this great cowboy state and other places that support the efforts within the cowboy state. One of the strides that I think that the Wyldlife Fund, in a very short amount of time, we're talking 5 years. When you think about that, established in 2019, you don't come on board until, what'd you say, March 9th? In my mind, if you had to put a starting point on COVID, it was March 12th when the NBA canceled its season, right? you talk about being born in the fire. You have been. But the Wyldlife Fund and the efforts that have taken place in regard specifically to wildlife crossings, and there has been a lot of effort. We have partnered with you several years now on a golf tournament.
Yes.
Where that I-25 KC to Buffalo Wildlife Crossing project has been the benefactor of those efforts. But when you talk about wildlife crossings specifically, just in a general 30,000-foot view term, the Wyldlife Fund, the ability to collect, whether it's been through the Outdoor Fund with Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, the Knobloch Family Foundation, our efforts with Muley Fanatic Foundation, wildlife crossings it's the shiny object in the room where you guys have made a huge amount of progress in being able to generate dollars to get these projects to meet their fiscal and financial goals.
Yeah, Josh, I appreciate it. And like you said, it's an absolute team effort. And these projects, they make sense. I'm sure you talk about it all the time. $50+ million is the expense to our state every year in personal property damage, personal injury, loss of wildlife value, roughly big game collisions every single day in Wyoming. We lose well over 1,000 game animals every year in Wyoming, and that number is probably underreported to a metric of the fourth, is what some experts say. These projects move the needle immediately, and they're very difficult because, as you all know, big dollar numbers over a period of time. But the Wyldlife Fund, we're huge believers in crossings, as Muley Fanatic Foundation is, and I'm really proud of our efforts together, Josh. You know, that golf outing every year after year, we've raised a little more. We were up around, I think, $17,000 to $20,000 this past year. So I think what we've done well together is, even though these are big dollar projects, there's a grassroots component because people in Wyoming believe in them. There's a huge safety value for both you and your loved ones as you're driving on the roads. But then corporate support of folks like Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, and then the family foundations such as Knobloch. And then on top of that, the energy sector has really stepped up and been of assistance. The Wyldlife Fund, really the first two projects we really bit into the apple on were the Buffalo to KC I-25 Wildlife Crossing Project, which is 90% completed. And then, of course, the Highway 89 South Kemmerer Wildlife Crossing Project as well.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Huge news, monumental news in my mind that was announced on Tuesday of this week with the Wildlife Crossings pilot program and the fully funded ask from Wyoming for $24.3 million for the I-80 to Kemmerer South 189 Wildlife Crossing Project. That's a game changer.
Josh, it's undeniable. Wyoming's leading the way. It's undeniable. It really is. The research that's being done in our migration corridors, these shovel-ready projects, for Wyoming to get $24.3 million when only $111 million was handed out nationwide in this first round of the Wildlife Crossing pilot program. Holy cow. It says so much about everyone in Wyoming and the commitment we have to wildlife. And Josh, this better than anybody, the power of public-private partnerships. Public-private partnerships between industry, nonprofit, foundations, for Wyoming to go after this and get this, and especially the herds that this project impacts, the Wyoming range herd, the Uinta mule deer herds that were just devastated this past winter, economic development in that region with the TerraPower nuclear power plant going in the next handful of years, and the additional traffic on that stretch of roadway that bisects crucial migration and critical winter range. It's huge, man. Like Wyoming, we need to celebrate this win, but we shouldn't get complacent. I feel let's keep the pedal to the floor and let's go after the next one. But man, and then I got to say, the Wyoming Department of Transportation, the leadership of Darren, the leadership of Director Nesvik at Game and Fish, and our governor, Mark Gordon, holy cow, we've got lightning in a bottle here, Josh, and there's so many people to thank, but it's a big step forward for the state.
Yeah, how all of the stars have aligned on the timeline at this very time. you have to be able to recognize that there is some magic that has occurred to put all of these organizations, agencies, leaders in the position that they are in at this very moment. It's just not by coincidence. Great things are happening. And yeah, it's exciting. It's very exciting.
Different feelings about all this federal spending and the federal dollars. Okay, everybody's got different feelings about it. But the way I look at it is, if that money's going to be spent, I want it spent in Wyoming. I want it brought here for our resources. And the fact that our state was able to pull us off, I think we should be very proud about that. It's going to save wildlife. It's going to keep people safe on the roadways. And kudos to you, Josh, for all you did on this. But let me just say also what we were able to do together, $1 million in private funding raised since the first of this year, which is a very short time period. Energy sector, nonprofit partners, family foundations, corporate donors. I think we had a little over 20 donors. There was a high level of interest in this project, and teamwork got it done.
That's the flavor of the day, is collaboration.
Absolutely.
Hey, McBarnes, let me talk to you just briefly about, just so folks know, you and I have had a friendship now that spans some years, so it's easy for me to know this, but I think it's important that others know this as well, because you're not a Wyoming guy. You wanted to live in Wyoming. You had this dream to be here, and you and your beautiful wife, Samantha, have decided to raise your family here and your son, Lincoln. But how did you get to Wyoming? I know the story, but I think it's a great story to share, so tell it.
Yeah, Josh, I was born in the cornfields of Indiana, smaller community of about 17,000 people called Frankfort, Indiana, home of the Frankfort hot dogs. If you've ever seen the movie Blue Chips with Nick Nolte, that was filmed in Case Arena, and I loved growing up in Frankfort. I went to Butler University in Indianapolis, Indiana. Basketball was king. I was there when we made our back-to-back national title runs. It was an exciting time to be a Bulldog. And I wanted to be a doctor. That's all I wanted to be, Josh. And I took all those science courses. I wanted to help people. And I got really sick when I was in college and spent a lot of time at Raleigh Children's Hospital. By the grace of God, I'm here. I'm healthy, and I praise him for that. And I was like, you know what? Time is short. Life is precious. There's work to be done. What can I do? Because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. I want to go back to my hometown of Frankfort, and I want to run for mayor of the city. And people laughed. They thought I was crazy. Anytime you have a big dream in life, you're going to have the haters. But I wore out 2 good pairs of Reebok sneakers, knocking on every door in Frankfort, and had a great team around me, and was elected, and ended up being elected for 3 consecutive terms, and became the first 3-term elected mayor in the city's history. And over that course of time, I had been coming to Wyoming and hunting. And at the time, former Game and Fish Commissioner Pete Doobie owned Bear Track Outfitters, and grew a very dear relationship with Pete and consider him like a father figure. And it just got the call, and hey, we're starting up this organization, and might you be interested? And I said, yeah, send me the job description. And one thing led to another, Josh, and my wife and I, we prayed about it sincerely, and we thought, you know what, we've had an amazing journey here in central Indiana. We've garnered a lot of skills that are applicable in other areas. Let's swing the bat on this one, because Wyoming just captured my heart the first time I was in the Bighorns and heard those elk sound off after the sun went down. Just captured my heart. So my wife and I moved here to Buffalo, and I'm proud to say, although I'm not a true Wyomingite, I'm a transplant. My son is. He was born in Sheridan. He's 2.5 years old. His name's Lincoln. And we're on this next journey, and grew up hunting, fishing. Outdoors is just a part of my blood. So to be able to play a small role and give back to what I consider the mecca of wildlife here in Wyoming, it's pretty darn cool. So I'll tell everyone out there, if you get a chance, life's going to throw you some crazy opportunities. And every now and then, you got to get outside of your comfort zone for the great stuff to happen. And when we moved here, we hardly knew anything. It was scary. But I got to tell you, I only want to leave Wyoming in a box, man. I love Wyoming. I love this state. I love the people. So that's how we got here.
Yeah, it's a great story. And I like to hear it. I'm glad you were able to share it with others. You have done a tremendous job being a very solid ambassador for the state of Wyoming and the efforts that so many folks within Wyoming hold to their core. It is absolutely... It is the epitome of why we live here. It's not the weather. It is those vast wild things and wild places and those beautiful vistas and landscapes that they resonate with us at a very intimate level that is special. And unless you live here and have experienced that, it's probably hard to wrap your head around. But Chris, we're glad to have you in the role that you're in. You're doing a wonderful job leading the Wyldlife Fund. The Wyldlife Fund has grown. You have added an employee, Nate Brown, who's been a great addition to help carry some of the load with you. Where do you see the Wyldlife Fund in the next 5 years?
Yeah, great question. And I do want to thank Nate. If you see a big cowboy out there, that's Nate Brown. And he's a great guy. And back to Wyldlife for Tomorrow, Nate's done a lot of work on that front that's got that program to where it is. Nate's a great hand. Josh, the next 5 years for the Wyldlife Fund, we continue to manage growth really well. I want to become even better where they need to go to make the biggest impact. We're constantly evaluating that process. I hope the Wyldlife Fund gets to a point where we're capitalized, where we can have annual requests for proposals before field seasons. We can get into a rhythm of providing consistent funding. And I want to continue to build relationships with NGOs across the state. Like I said, we all have a role to play, and we're not here to replace any role, but to augment that. Maintaining a great relationship with the Game and Fish Commission, which we've had. I want to maintain that and continue that to make sure we're continuing to focus on the strategies and priorities. We're not a big shop. We're a two-man shop, so we do everything from overseeing the website, doing the financials, all the above. And I love that. I hope we get to a point in time where we can get a little more help. But when I know you guys run things this way as well, I want to be a lean organization. I want 9 out of every $10 going back on the ground to help wildlife. That's always in the back of my mind, keeping the Wyldlife Fund as lean and mean as possible to advance wildlife. We've checked off, with the help of Muley Fanatic Foundation, I-25 Buffalo to KC, and soon the Kimmerer project. That'll take a couple years for engineering and construction, but go on to the next big wildlife crossing project, really digging into these migration corridors, Josh, the Absaroka Front, the Sublette County Mule Deer Migration Corridor, Baggs and Platte Valley. I want the Wyldlife Fund to continue to make an impact in these areas in partnership with the USDA Big Game Pilot and growing our Inspire Kid Camp program. We've got a good model there. We've got a proof of concept, but I'd like to see one not only in Bondurant, but in Cody and in Hewlett, in various areas of the state where more kids can really take advantage of it. There's a lot to do. We won't let moss grow under our feet, but yeah, it'll be an exciting next 5 years for sure.
Yes, it will. Yeah, and glad to be in the arena with you, Chris. That's the charge, is to make a difference beyond your living years, one day at a time, one step at a time, one effort at a time. And I'm glad glad our efforts align. I'm glad the Wyldlife Fund and the inspiration to bring that to where it is today was had. It's in good hands with you at the helm. So continue, and happy trails, and keep trucking along.
Josh, I appreciate it so much, and want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And thank you for all you do. We're following your vision, your lead, and again, thank you, my friend. It's been an honor to partner with you.
Yeah, thanks for your kind words, Chris. You and Samantha and Lincoln have a wonderful holiday season, and a Merry Christmas to you. God bless you and your family.
All right, God bless, Josh.
Gathered around the campfire's flickering glow, stories ignited, bridging hearts and minds as the world outside faded and connection reigned supreme. Welcome to Campfire Chats.
And welcome to Campfire Chat. As said, I'm Josh Coursey, host of Campfire Chat and Wild Things and Wild Places, a production of the Muley Fanatic Foundation. And joining me today to talk Campfire Chat, really celebrate the love of hunting and what the role of hunting is, Taylor Lashar.
Hi, how are you
Taylor.
doing?
Great. It's great to just be able to talk to you about this. We spend so much of our time in conversation talking about very valuable work that you do as a scientist, specific to mule deer, the MFF fellow, which is very cool just in itself. But this is completely different, and it's different by design, and that is our recognition of the role that hunting plays in conservation, but that it's also a heritage and a culture that is extremely valuable, one that needs all the rightful and responsible promotion that it can have. And so I guess on that, where do you see your role as a hunter? How valuable is that to you individually?
So I grew up in a big city. I grew up in Phoenix, and I didn't start hunting actually until I was an undergrad. The first time I went hunting, I went squirrel hunting. And so hunting is something that I have started to learn about and connect to as an adult. My dad did hunt. He elk hunted every year when I was a child, but I never went with him. It's something that I've started to learn about as an adult, and it's something I value. I unfortunately don't spend as much time as I would like to. Oftentimes it overlaps with when we have a lot of our field work going on, or I'm trying to catch up from the summer, and so I'm in the office a lot. But I went squirrel hunting and rabbit hunting during my undergrad, and then the first big game hunt that I went on was an elk hunt in Arizona, in northern Arizona. And I went with my dad, and I had a cow tag, but we only saw bulls. So,
Isn't that terrible when that happens? Yeah.
but it was very fun.
Yeah.
And then the first successful hunt I went on was a pronghorn hunt. And I went actually with a couple of my coworkers in the Monteith shop just outside of Casper 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. And you had success then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All three of us filled our tags.
Doe antelope?
No, I had a buck tag. I think, yeah. So Rhiannon, Jacob Hack, and I both harvested bucks, and then Brittany Wagler, who it was Rhiannon and I's first time hunting, being out there, and then Brittany, she's a research scientist in the Monteith shop. She's been hunting her whole life, so she was there to guide us and teach us, and it was an awesome time. And she killed a doe.
Okay. Yeah. Let's start at the squirrel hunt. I have a couple of things here I want to unpack with you. Weapon of choice for the squirrel hunt? 22 shotgun?
Shotgun.
Shotgun? Okay.
Yeah. So there's a red squirrel project. There's a species of red squirrel that's endemic to Arizona called the Mount Graham red squirrel. And I think they're endangered, but there are other squirrels that are invasive in that area. So they have just open season all the time on those squirrels, and they encourage people to go out there and kill them to reduce competition for these endangered red squirrels. And so I went out with some of my some of my friends from undergrad. Levi Heffelfinger, he is in Texas now. He's a professor, but we did our undergrads together, and he brought me and a couple other people who had never been hunting as a way to get us introduced into what hunting is in a way that was not super overwhelming.
Yeah. Do you remember much about the shotgun? 410 or 20 gauge, 12 gauge?
I'm pretty sure it was a 20 gauge, but I don't know.
I would think that, 12 gauge might not leave much squirrel.
Yeah.
Did you have success?
Yeah.
And you field dressed it and ate it? How'd you process that?
Yeah, so I think because I started as an adult, I didn't feel that sad about harvesting it, which I think I expected to, but I was excited, and I was also really excited to eat something that I went out and put effort into finding and hunting. And so we all field dressed our own squirrels. I think we killed like 15 that day, and then we made a stew that night on the campfire.
How cool was that?
It was so good.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. That's a one thing about hunting that besides the enjoyment of the actual activity itself, I think that's what oftentimes tends to get lost. And maybe you would agree. And if you think I'm incorrect, then please, you won't hurt my feelings by saying, no, I don't agree with that. But it does seem to me in this current society that folks are used to the convenience of being able to go to the market, find a nice saran wrap priced by pound, go to the checkout, put it in the freezer or put it in the refrigerator. And what should never be lost in my mind as a tradition and as a heritage, but just overall the sustainability of us as mankind, is that we have a very significant role in the management of all of our wildlife critters on the landscape, and hunters play a very valuable role in that. And being able to take that resource and then be able to consume that resource is something that we need to celebrate.
I agree 100%. Yeah. And game meat I'm so much happier when I'm eating game meat, whether it's something I've harvested or a friend. And I would prefer that almost anything I eat is game meat. I feel a lot better about it. I know where it comes from. I know how it was cared for. I know everything about it. And I know that it was ethically taken. Hunting to me is a really great way to sustain ourselves as humans.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about what hormones and steroids and stuff to add weight to give the highest return at market. It's just, and I was having this conversation with Mitch earlier, but it is organic at the very basic level.
Yeah.
Your hunting plans for this fall?
I didn't actually put in for any tags this fall because I am defending my PhD. So I wanted to.
So you're busy.
Yeah. I wanted to focus my efforts on finishing. But depending on how things go, I might end up getting a general elk tag and seeing if I can.
Boy, that's music to my ears to hear you say you're going to go get an elk.
Yeah.
Boy, we need to take a few of those, don't we? Yeah, at the detriment of mule deer. Wyoming has some great hunting opportunities. As a resident of this state, you were afforded a tremendous value in being able to buy some general license opportunities over the counter in your part of the state. You're afforded great opportunities in the Laramie area. But around our state, Our whitetail populations have some tremendous opportunities if you have the right relationships with private landowners or can seek out through local game and fish offices, willing landowners that want to be able to help cull those populations. There's a process to being able to garner that information that folks have to invest in. But as someone who is relatively new to taking to the field to hunt, what do you think the what other intimidating factors are there maybe that need to be talked about a little bit more, or maybe more than anything, just to be provided so that folks that have those reservations can overcome them, so that if there is an interest that you can make those opportunities happen, or to be able to connect those dots to want to be able to pursue those opportunities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, honestly, the size of big game animals is an intimidating thing. If you are new to hunting and you're not hunting with someone who knows what they're doing, like going out and harvesting an elk is, you killed a 500-pound animal. Like, how do you process that? So I think that's honestly a big thing. And for me, starting out killing squirrels and rabbits was a really nice way to get me used to like the process of skinning animals, gutting animals, thinking about how to cut up the meat. And then that scaled up to bigger animals and allowed me to do that.
That's a great point too. That when you're field dressing an elk, I mean, you have to have a plan. Yeah. You have to have some background of how to go about that, because its mere size can be intimidating for someone who hasn't done that or been privy to seeing that, and just through exposure.
Yeah. And so I think having people who are willing to bring new hunters out and show them the ropes without making them feel bad for not knowing some things, that's like a huge step forward in making hunting more accessible.
Yeah. As a woman, do you feel that this sport or this activity has been dominated by this male aspect that comes with some ego, that they have always done it, their dad did it, their grandfather did it, and as an adult woman who maybe hasn't hunted, and not you because you have, but for another adult woman who has never but has the interest, there is an intimidating factor of, I need to go sit in a hunter education course with a bunch of 10-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
That are doing it because their dad did it, and their dad did it, and their dad did it, or their mom and dad did it. How would you suggest we get over that? And is there opportunities that need more effort there?
I think so. I've been incredibly lucky in that I work with a lot of women, and I work with women who grew up hunting. As I was talking about earlier, Brittany has been hunting since she was 12, and she went out with us, and that going out with a woman who knows what she's doing as a woman myself was a really nice way for me to not feel intimidated. And I think having women be willing to teach other women is a huge step forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having a mentor, I think just provides a level of comfort and confidence.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's easy to connect with a mentor who you have a lot in common with, which for women, having a woman who's a mentor is an easy way to make that connection.
Yeah. Any ideas you ever have on, or people that are interested? Yeah. Anything we can help do to help further facilitate. I just ultimately feel this tremendous responsibility that as hunters, it reminds me when I used to go to this vacation Bible school as a kid at the Baptist church that I grew up in, that when it was Vacation Bible Week, bring a friend. As hunters, we need to do a better job of being ambassadors, knowing that our demographics are shrinking, that we need more people to recognize the role of hunting and the value of hunting. On that note, how intimidating for you is the firearm or the weapon component? Is that also something that is maybe a block?
For me, it's not, but I can see how if somebody didn't grow up around firearms and doesn't understand intimately how they work, that can be something that is uncertain, and with uncertainty comes some hesitation. So I can see that. I personally didn't really have that, but I didn't grow up shooting a lot of guns, but we had a BB gun, and my dad had hunting rifles and muzzle loaders that were in our house that I was used to seeing. So I think that's part of the reason. But I do think that for people who just aren't exposed to that in their lives, that can be a hurdle as well.
How, as you move forward in your adult life, how much value do you find that hunting will play as you continue to persist as an adult?
I think a lot, both as a scientist who studies big game and as a person who truly enjoys eating game meat.
Yeah.
I hope that I'm able to hunt or be friends with hunters who will share their meat with me for the rest of my life.
That's always good too, right?
Yeah.
Favorite recipe?
That's a good question. Pronghorn is my favorite meat.
I love pronghorn.
Yeah.
Mine too.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think you and I are in a very small class of big game hunters that would not prioritize pronghorn as the top of the list.
I agree. The first time I ever had it was when I came to Wyoming and I was working as a tech. Jill Randall, who's the habitat biologist, or she was the habitat
Big game
biologist at the time.
coordinator,
Now she's the coordinator. But yeah, they made pronghorn spaghetti and I was sold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am a pronghorn street tacos guy all the way.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very choice cut of meat for me is pronghorn. I absolutely love it. Dream hunt as we close. Dream hunt. What would that be?
So I've never been mule deer hunting, and I have been studying mule deer for the past 6 years now. And so I think, honestly, hunting mule deer in a place that I know and love would be a dream hunt for me, which I don't hunt in the Wyoming range because I work here so frequently, and there's somewhat of a conflict of interest there. But eventually, when I'm no longer on the project, maybe I'll come back and hunt in the Wyoming range.
All right. On that note, just knowing your background and the work that you have done, would you harvest a doe?
Yes, for sure.
You would? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because some people might think that just the intimate relationship you have with the resource, that in recognizing the generational role that the doe plays to be able to provide the sustainability of the herd, you have no problem with that.
I think it would depend on where the population is at. If doe harvest was allowed right now in the Wyoming range, I would not harvest a doe just because of where these animals are. But in a healthy population that's doing well, I
certainly take.
Yeah.
Awesome. Taylor, it's been great to talk to you about hunting. I'm glad we could get to this point of just being able to have a conversation that wasn't revolving around the work that you do. That's very extremely valuable. But just to know that we share a passion for hunting, and as a sister to that heritage, congrats.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Taylor Lashar talking hunting on Campfire Chat, production of the Muley Fanatic Foundation and Wild Things and Wild Places. Until next time, happy trails.
And that wraps up another episode of Wild Things and Wild Places. But remember, the journey doesn't end here. Make sure you never miss out by subscribing. Whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, streaming us on our website, or following us on social media, subscribing is the best way to stay connected. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more wild episodes.
Everybody knows I'm a muley fanatic.